Welcome to The Stacks, a podcast about books and the people who read them. I'm your host, Tracy Thomas, and this week on The Stacks, we're doing something a little different. In light of the recent wave of book bannings all across America, I felt it was really important to spotlight what's going on. I have been really upset over everything I'm reading and hearing about, and so I wanted to take the time to address it on the podcast. Every single day this week, Monday through Friday, I'm talking to different people impacted by book bannings. My guests will range from educators and students to booksellers, politicians, and authors. Things have been moving really quickly in the book banning arena, and in an effort to be timely with our coverage of book bannings, we put together this whole mini series in about a week. These 5 days of coverage is not comprehensive, but instead a way to highlight more voices and to remind us all what is at stake. Throughout the week, you'll also hear from some of my favorite authors and thinkers about their favorite banned books. Everything we talk about on today's episode can be found in the link in the show notes. I also want to say, if you like what you hear, if you appreciate the work that I'm doing to create The Stacks every single week, please join the Stacks Pack on Patreon. The Stacks is a completely independent podcast, so without the support of listeners like you, there really is no show. You will get perks like our virtual book club and bonus episodes, and also you'll get to rest easy knowing your contribution makes The Stacks possible. So to join us, head to patreon.com/thestacks. All right, now let's get to today's episode all about the banning of books. All right, everybody, it is the final day of this week that I have not titled. I think maybe we're going to call it Banned Books in the Stacks. I don't know. We'll see. But I'm here today with friend of the podcast and unfortunately a banned author, author of Heavy, How to Slowly Kill Yourself and Others in America, Long Division, Kiese Laymon. Welcome to the Stacks.
Hey, Tracy, I'm happy to be here with you. Thank you.
I'm always happy. I had to ask my mom. I was like, is it too much to have Kiese again?
What'd she say?
She said no. She likes you.
Yeah,
But
I'm
I
always
was
worried
like,
that I'm saturating it, but yeah.
I think it's fine. Well, here's the truth. I just really want to talk to you about this stuff.
Yeah.
And so I don't really care if everyone at home is annoyed. We won't have Kiese back for at least a month. Okay, get over it.
Right. And
You're like, yeah.
and we're not really talking about my book, right? I mean, like the insides of my book, really. Not really.
Right.
Yeah,
We're talking about the outsides of your book.
Yeah, literally.
So wait, have you ever heard that podcast Seen on Radio? And it was like they did a series on whiteness and then they did a series on men. They did a series on, anyways, it's like part of Radio Lab, I think, loosely.
Oh, wow.
And it was this white guy and he talked about whiteness. But that season, he brought on this black guy, his friend. Do you know Chandrai Komanika?
Yeah.
So Chandrai would come on and like debrief with the guy after he would have these like crazy conversations about whiteness. So you're sort of like my Chandrai for this.
Okay.
Like you're going to like help debrief. We're going to talk through it.
It's going to be Chandrai.
Yeah. Chandrai. Okay, let's start at the beginning. Do you remember the first time you found out that your book was being challenged or banned?
Yeah, the first time was in March. My book came out in October 2018. And I think around March was the first time that I heard that a principal or a school was like banning it. And it was a school that I'd been asked to come speak at in Mississippi. And then I heard later on that week from a principal there that they didn't think that my coming would be useful and that the book would not be read or allowed to be read on the campus.
Ay.
Yeah.
Was it a high school?
Yeah, this is where it gets complicated. It was a high school, and I don't want to say the name, but it was a high school. I was doing a lot of work in Mississippi Delta, and I'll just say it was a school that was primarily for it was a school for black boys. So I was really hyped to go. And I was invited by somebody who was connected to the school. And then I heard from the person who runs the school that not only was I not invited, but that the book was banned. Like they were not going to allow their students to read it. And if they read it on campus, they get in trouble and blah, 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 blah. But I was doing other stuff in the Delta at the time. So I was just like, that makes me mad, but I got other work to do. So I'm going to do it.
I see. What about like everything that's going on now with like this recent wave of book bannings? Like, what do you make of this? Because it sort of feels different than book bannings like a few years ago even, and especially different than book bannings like when I was coming up. Do you feel like there's
Yeah.
something different at stake here or going on here?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's different, it feels different to me, is that one, like, they're banning heavy, for example, in Missouri, and Morrison, right? Like, and George Johnson and other books, but Morrison. So when I saw that they were banning the Bluest Eye and heavy, I'm just saying because I wrote heavy, I was like, that feels different. But I still was coming along with the CRT bans and the mass mandate bans, which I think are kind of similar.
Yeah.
And all of this is post Floyd, awakening, post whatever you want to call it, January 6th insurrection, whatever. So I think all of this is like connected to that universe. But for me, it's that Morrison, and like that to me just feels different. Like that book, especially, like that's when you know it's not about the book at all to me.
But that book has been banned a lot. It's like always on the list.
But not by heavy, but not next to heavy. That's what I'm
Oh,
saying.
I
It's just
see.
like
I
when I
see.
saw, so like, ban my book all you want to, but some of us actually like are here because of Morrison. And so it's just like, Maya Angelou always talks about like insult to injury and stuff, but like, it's just like, whoa, wait, that, I don't know, somehow it hurt more to see that my book was banned next to the author who made a lot of us possible. Because
I
everybody
see.
knows Morrison is being banned everywhere. But I
Yeah.
never look at the other books that are banned next to Morrison. And when you see yours banned next to Morrison, and you know you're so indebted to Morrison for language, that actually, it makes me angry. And we could talk about the anger, but beyond the anger, it just like, kind of like hurts my heart a little bit.
Yeah. Well, that's sort of the question. I keep seeing like on Twitter, which I know is not a real place, but it's a place that I live. I keep
Yeah.
seeing people be like, oh, like when an author posts like an article that's like, oh, my book is banned in this place, someone invariably will reply and be like, you should be proud. Like, that's awesome. And that's always struck me as not how I think that I would feel about my book being banned. So I'm
Hmm.
curious, like, is there a sense of pride in that, or what is coming up when your book is banned?
And then again, I think this is that's what I'm saying about tied to Morrison. It's like, I feel a kind of pride that was some entity that deemed the Bluest Eye like unreadable for children would also deem heavy unreadable. Like, there's something, if
Mhm.
you really look and be like, okay, well, that means I might be doing something right. But I wrote this book. People always talk about the audience. Like, I wrote this book for young people. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? And old people, but the young person in all of us. And so I get it, right? Like, it's a badge of honor to have your book banned by terrible people. Okay. But it also, I mean, it's also, honestly, it just kind of hurts.
Yeah.
Because my history with reading and writing and discipline are so tied to libraries. You know what I'm saying? I got kicked out of school for taking a book out of the library, bringing it back. Libraries for me, like, people always tell those library stories. Libraries, people always talk about libraries being a sanctuary. Libraries weren't necessarily a sanctuary for me. I went into the library for different reasons, and so anyway, it. But if I would have found a book like Heavy in a library, it would have helped my life. Just like if I would have found a Bluest Eye. I found all of those books in my mama's house, in my
Mm.
mama's library. And so the fact that kids, regardless of where they're from, have no possibility of finding those books in libraries, that's going to define what libraries do for those kids for forever. And I know the opposite is like, well, those kids are going to go and try to read those books because their parents said don't. Okay, maybe some. But I think a lot of others are going to be like, yeah, like libraries are places where certain books, like, should not even be read. And that's scary, because we are people who've thought a lot about love, justice, readability, childhood, and, to take an audience away from us, who a lot of us sort of imagined as part of our audience, is just
Right.
sort of, it hurts a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I would be very upset about
Yeah.
if my work got banned. I think what you said about like kids, some kids maybe going and finding it, I think that that's like what we want to believe will happen.
Right.
But I really don't know that if I was a young person and I did not know about a book,
Right.
like I wonder how many like teenagers are up on what books are being banned in their schools. Like, are
Right.
they reading the news? Are they, following you on Twitter to know that? And so to my point, it's like taking it out of the school means it makes it impossible for a kid to like stumble across it, because I just don't know that kids are going to actively go out and be like, what is heavy? Like,
Yeah,
because they may have
right.
never even heard of it. They wouldn't even know what they're looking for.
And that's where I feel like this conversation is so much more complicated than the conversations I've been hearing outside of this podcast. Because the person who first told me about the eventual banning of heavy in Missouri, and I hope it's okay for me to say this, was one of the librarians at the school. You know, like they reached out to me and they were like, listen, something really bad is happening to you, heavy. And I want you to know that we've tried to fight it, blah, blah, blah. But here's what's happening. So I think sometimes we can lose ourselves in this and be like, it's the librarians.
Oh,
Also,
right.
you know, I just want to make sure people understand, like, school boards and librarians. I'm sure there are some librarians who are like, this book shouldn't be here. But in my actual experience, the librarians have been the people pushing the book. So
Right.
if students do read heavy in these schools where heavy, for example, is banned, it's gonna be because the librarian said, I think you should read that anyway.
Right.
Not that the school board banned it and the kid is gonna go find it. Yeah, I
Right.
do think that when we say that, we're kind of playing ourselves, you know?
Yeah, I just think it's like, I don't know. I was a teenager. I wasn't super
Yeah.
like actively looking up banned books in my school
Right,
district to
right.
like go find. And then also that also implies that you have access to go buy a book somewhere else or go to your public library and find that. And like, depending on who your parents are, maybe your parents are happy the book's banned. They don't want you to read it. So then
Right.
you have to secretly go to the library or a bookstore. Like,
Right.
it's not quite as easy. People are like, oh, it's the information age. You can get anything online. I'm like, I don't know. I don't think you can just get heavy online.
No.
You have to have money to buy it on Kindle or Kobo, or you have to have one of those things. And like, it gets to be slightly more complicated, especially if you're a young person, because, you know, maybe there's parental controls on your iPad, you know, like there's all sorts of barriers. So I think like this idea that any young kid can just get a book because it's banned is like, well, I just don't know that that's true.
Right. I mean, I love the idea that we've really convinced ourselves of that. Do you know, we've really forgotten who we were as children. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like when I was a kid and I loved to read and write what I wanted to read and write. But if I went into, there were books being banned when I was a child. You know, you tell me a book's banned, I'm gonna go see if I can watch something on Cinemax. You know what I mean? Like, like that. I'm not gonna be like, oh, I gotta go find that book now. You know what I mean? But if there was a librarian who was like, listen, the school board is banning this book, but I think it's a book you might really need to read, I still might say, okay, and not go read it. But I'm more likely to read it if somebody's actually like, you need to read that book, you know?
Right.
So,
right.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I just, I was not a contrarian child. Really. I didn't like getting in trouble. So I don't like to do things that are bad. So I would not read the book ever in my whole life. I like, someone would be like, oh, this book was banned when you were a kid. I'd be like, well, I probably shouldn't read it. Like, Tracy, you're 35. Like, no, I still don't think I should read it.
That's funny. That's really funny.
Okay. I do want to ask you about another like sort of personal part of this, which is your book's a memoir.
Yeah.
You lived what's in your book.
Right.
And it's being deemed inappropriate for children.
Yeah.
Obscene, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, what's that like?
I mean, this is where I started to be an asshole. And I wanted to start this by not being an asshole. It's like, I just pity. I just pity. I love those children that aren't getting able to read the book. But I pity the parents for just being so fucked up, to tell you the truth. Do you know what I mean? Like, like you have to do nothing but pity parents who would say that a book like Heavy, which is actually taking childhood super seriously, is something that like their child shouldn't read. And what they said about Heavy is that it was like pornographic, right? And it was the child pornographic stuff that they claimed was keeping Heavy out of rotation. But, you know, we know that our childhoods are obscene. The nation has insisted on that. Like, our childhoods are partially obscene. Every single child in this nation, every single adult who grew up in this nation has had a somewhat obscene childhood. So I just don't think obscenity is still the word in 2022 we should be using to decide what's deemed like readable and not. So, you know, it makes me feel bad for those children because they have parents that I just think don't care about them. And that's what people be like, you don't know. And I'm like, well, that's what I feel. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I think this is tied to, you know, some people don't want their kids to go to school with masks at all where I'm from, right?
Right.
I think people who don't want their kids to go to school with masks often don't want their kids to read books that might encourage them to see the world differently or see their parents differently. And so, the kindest thing I can say is that I pity those people, and I hope for the best for those children.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the nicest thing I can say.
It's very bell hooks about like all about love. It's very like, you can love your child. You can say that you love your child, but are you actually like loving your child? And what does that mean? And it's like
Yeah,
keeping information from them and keeping art from them and those things that actually love. And I think like everyone would, or most people would say, I love my kid, but like, is it an active practice of love or is it a sort of gesture or pontification or
right.
performance of love? And I think like that's sort of the
And
difference,
there's a
right?
through line. There's a through line with parents and parental groups that I've experienced who do not want their children to live in a country with clean air or
Right.
clean water.
Right.
For me, in my limited experience, there's a through line. Those parents often do not also want their children to read the work of Toni Morrison. And so, like, forget me. If you don't want your child to read Morrison, and you don't want your child to have clean air, and you don't want your child to get something that they can harm you with, because
Right.
you're probably like this is not really about any of these books. Do you know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
And I know the argument that it is about the book, and you should really embrace that, but it's not about the book. It's not
So then
about the
what is it
book.
about? What is it? What is it?
I,
It's
because you can't tell me that those people have read the book. Like
no,
you
of
can't.
course not. Of
Yeah,
course not.
but what I think they have read enough of or heard enough of is that these are books that are pushing back against their worldviews, and they're
Yeah.
being written like a lot of them being written by different kinds of people. But this cluster of books that they're focusing on now happen to be written by mostly Black people who are critical of the way anti-Blackness works, and really, some of us who are writing these books are really like thoughtfully trying to explore like the way Blackness and queerness and class and perceptibility and touch and abuse, like all of that shit works. And I think, again, if you're a terrified, coward parent, you might not want your child to do that. But we know your child is looking at porn right now, fam. Like,
Right.
and and that, and I'm not saying that's bad necessarily, but do not act as if you're doing this out of a care for your child, like, because a
Right.
lot of your politics show the opposite. Why don't you want your
Right.
child to have clean air? Why don't you want your child to have clean water? Like, and why don't you want your child to want that for every single child in the universe? Because I guarantee the people who wrote those books want that. Like, we want
Right.
those kids who aren't allowed to read our books to be able to have the cleanest air, drink the blood, like not get COVID, not get anybody else sick. We want that for those children, and their
Right.
parents don't. So I don't know. I don't know what else to say to that.
Yeah. Did you read that Heather McGee book, Some of Us?
Yes,
That's what you're reminding me of. So good.
so good.
That book was so good.
It won, didn't it? Wasn't it shortlisted for NBA or something like that?
It
Did it
was long
win?
listed, I think,
Long
for
list.
the
Okay,
NBA.
okay,
No,
yeah.
All She Carried
Oh,
won.
that's right. But the Heather McGee book was like really, yeah, because it speaks directly to what we're talking about. I mean,
Yeah, it speaks
directly.
directly to this idea of like, if you, it's the zero sum game that like a lot of white parents fear. If
Right.
my kid has, if I have to give Black kids clean water, then my kid's water isn't cleaner than their water.
Right.
Even though the idea is if everyone has clean water, we can move on from this issue.
Yeah. Yes.
And around healthcare and all of these things.
And we haven't even talked about guns. You know what I mean? Like
No,
you
right,
don't
of
want
course.
to. This is the thing a lot of people are talking about. Like you don't. So your child is more likely to be able, in your worldview, to pick up a gun and use it responsibly, but they can't use this book responsibly. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I grew up around these people who were like, I was a kid who was given a gun at like 8. And I grew up around surrounding the place where I live were lots of white boys who were given guns at like 9 and 10. And so you can give a kid something that can kill a person from 100, 200 yards away. But Morrison and George Johnson and something I wrote is more dangerous. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think it is more dangerous if you have a particular sensibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think like I don't know if you've noticed this, but one of the books that I know is being banned, but I feel like is not being talked about in the same conversation is the 1619 Project.
Oh, yeah. That's
Why do you think that book is like being separated from these other books that are being banned though, you know, like, because I know it's being banned places, but like every time I hear about books being banned, it's like Toni Morrison, it's Mao's, it's George M. Johnson's book,
Right.
it's Fun Home, and it's never 1619. But we know 1619 is being banned and like being legally challenged and all this stuff. So
Right.
how come it's being excluded from this conversation?
Well, because I think there's an argument to be made that the 1619 Project is the conversation and all of these other things are shadows. Do you know what I mean? Like the 1619 Project has been, banned, for example, in University of Mississippi where I teach, like it hasn't necessarily, you can't ban a book, but what you can do is you can create an institute that's going to work to undo whatever that project might do, but it's a fucking book. Like, what is the
Right.
project? Like, what is that project gonna do? So in my state, people talk about 1619 Project often. And I think all across this country, we saw, and I'm not talking about just people, because the other conversation is there are people on the left who think that 1619 Project is whack. And so like, I think that the 1619 Project and the backlash to it is part of what has like guided some people to start banning books, banning CRT. And of course, it is not about the 1619 Project. It's about Black people and self-determination and
Right.
centering ourselves and actually wanting to critically look at ourselves and what white folk have done to us. Like, that's what they don't want us to do. It appears the 1619 Project was doing that. But I do think a lot of this is about the 1619 Project. No
Yeah.
question. No question.
Yeah, I do too. I think that it's like you're saying, like they're pulling from the playbook that we're seeing against the 1619 Project, but it's just so interesting, like the coverage of it
Right.
is like it's not being connected in the coverage,
That's a
which I
great
just
point.
find really interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's certainly connected just on the fundamental ground of like banning books.
Yeah.
But it's also connected that like this current wave, I feel like, is in response to not just the book, but also the articles that came out in 2019, like the whole idea of the 1619 Project. So I don't know. I keep wondering, like when I hear it on other podcasts or on the news, I'm like, is anyone going to even mention 1619?
But you know what? This is the first time I've thought about this, Tracy. But like, something I think is so like important about what you're saying is that the 1619 Project, like if opened up, right, is a web of like gives people a web of different like artists who are trying to explore different
Right.
movements and blah, blah, blah. But the thing about a book, I'm just going to talk about Heavy for a sec. Like, if you do read Heavy, you don't just read Heavy, because like what I'm doing in that book is reading Their Eyes Are Watching God, reading Native Son, reading The Color Purple, reading Gorilla My Love, like reading Bell Hooks, reading Kimberly Crenshaw. Like I'm like, that book is also about the reading of books that they also don't want people to read.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So I just think it's really important to think about sometimes how, our books are so intertextual. And if you really do read some of these books, you're going to be asked to read some other really scary books. So that are going to necessitate you reading other really scary books. And so, like, again, if you are a coward who does not want to be seen, you better keep that shit away from your children.
Right.
The question is, I just think you probably would have kept it away from your children, whether you made a big deal about it or not. I don't think that it's like,
that's exactly right.
Right.
Like, again, I just don't know. I liked going to my school library. I liked going to the library in our neighborhood when I was a kid. I obviously like books, but even it's still true for me now to this day as a person who reads lots of books. I rarely read something that I see and have not heard about from someone else.
Right.
I'm rarely going into a bookstore or a library and just grabbing something off the shelf.
Right.
And I especially wasn't doing that at 9, 15, 18, 25.
Yeah.
Now, maybe more so because I'm like, oh, maybe I can find something no one's talking about and like I can cover it on the show. But like, I just don't know that kids are like going into their school library without the librarian saying, hey, little Kiese, I think you might like this.
Right.
You loved this book. Check this book. Like, I mean, maybe I'm not giving people enough credit and I'm only thinking about how I think about books, but like, if I haven't heard about something, I probably went into the library thinking about 20 books I have heard about,
Absolutely.
So I mean, I don't know. I hope that kids are more open-minded than me.
That me too. I mean, that was me. I mean, the book I got kicked out of college for taking. Like, I wasn't even in the library to get it for myself. You know what I mean? My girlfriend was like, "Can you pick up Red Badge of Courage for my brother?" And I was like, "Okay, I'll go get it." And I left my. I'm just saying.
Right.
Like, I think libraries have changed so many of our lives, but I just think the way we talk, and librarians have literally changed my life. But
Yeah.
I don't know. The kids are just like treating libraries the way they treat fucking Spotify or some shit,
Right.
or like cable TV
Right.
or YouTube. I said cable TV. I'm old at YouTube. You know what I'm
They're
saying?
definitely not treating it like cable TV. They're like, what's that?
Right. Maybe they are treating it like cable TV. Like, man, this shit whack. Like, and
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah. I don't know.
yeah.
Has being banned and being challenged or whatever, has that changed how you write or how you think about your writing or how you want to write?
I mean, nah, because like again, like this is where I can't speak for anybody else, but I mean, fam, like I got kicked out of school for writing. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I didn't get like I was on disciplinary probation because some white boys wanted to fucking fight me and my partner because of some shit I wrote, and the entire administration ganged up against me and my partner. You know what I'm saying? So I've always understood that like when you put this art out in the world, if it challenges white normative, often mask assumptions, people are gonna come at you. So
Mm.
I wasn't. It didn't hurt me when I found out initially that Heavy was gonna be banned. Like I understand this world. I understand what people want their white folks, especially who aren't really thoughtful, want their children to read, and some black folks who are really really into respectability and like really afraid. I understood there were gonna be people who challenged Heavy. I knew I wasn't writing a book that was just gonna be easy to consume, but I never thought that. I just keep having to come back. I just never thought that they would ban Heavy along with banning Morrison.
Right.
I mean, that to me was something I just never really imagined. So I'm saying all that to say, like, I know Heavy has been banned like 5, 6 different times by school boards, by librarians, by principals, blah blah blah. But I also know that I mean, I'm talking to you right now because librarians took my book seriously. Like
Right.
librarians decided I was gonna win that Carnegie Medal. Librarians in Mississippi decided to give me, I think I told you this, like, all these Mississippi Library Association awards. So I never saw librarians as necessarily like who I was fighting against. But I did know that the system in which libraries are a part, there are gonna be people who found problems with Heavy,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah. Earlier this week, we talked to Katrina Stokes, who is Mississippi librarian, and she talked about how, how librarians are human, which I think
Yes.
was like sort of her way of saying that while some librarians are in favor of the books and are championing the books and fighting the bans, that like there are, collections that are curated by people who believe that, certain things shouldn't be
Right.
taught. I mean, she did not say that exactly, but that's how I sort of read her saying that librarians are human.
Of course.
She
Of
was much more
course.
diplomatic than me.
Yeah.
Uh, she's got a whole industry to protect. I'm over here like librarians are banning shit. No, but I do think for the most part, librarians and teachers are, trying to do right within the parameters. And, it sucks for them too, I think, mostly.
Oh, absolutely. And the parameters have been set. I mean, I just think we've all been under and miseducated in classrooms, including
Yeah.
librarians. So like I
Yeah.
love what Katrina said, like we too, as people who write these books, like are mis and under and educated. And so,
Yeah.
but that's why we often encourage people to read the books of people who take bookmaking seriously. Like that's
Right.
the thing to me. Like I don't give a fuck if somebody reads some right wing, like, yeah, you're not asking me this, but like I don't care if people read the work of someone who's on the right who actually has taken the time to put a book together. Like bookmaking matters to me. Do you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
But also you don't have to be politically right to or left to understand that like what shaped my understanding of the way race and gender and sexuality worked as much as church or anything else was schools and books. You know what I'm saying? Like when I would read books
Right.
and they say call somebody a man and there wasn't a descriptive in front of it, I knew they were talking about white men because books taught me that, right? Like
Right.
and
Right.
then when they were talking about like women, I didn't have to ask myself or question whether those women were queer or anything like that because books taught me that women meant white straight women. Like books taught me. So the fact is like yes, like all of these books, even the books that these people are trying to ban, like there's something in there that is in my book, in Morrison's book, in George's book, I think is actually like harmful. That's what revision is for. But open up the process and let's honor the people who actually take bookmaking seriously. And I'm saying that to distinguish people from motherfuckers like Pence and Trump and a lot of other people. Or it could be somebody else, who politically is left, who like, I'm make any book you want to make, but like we gotta take seriously the people who take bookmaking seriously. That's what I think. You know what I mean? Like, and with the
Yeah.
understanding that there's going to be harmful shit in every fucking thing that you ever read. Everything.
All right, we're going to take a quick break to hear from some authors about their favorite banned books, and then we'll be back for the second half of my conversation with Kiese Laymon.
My name is Ariana Davis, and I'm the editorial director for The Today Show and also the author of What Would Frida Do? A Guide to Living Boldly. My favorite banned book is The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. It's easy to understand why on the surface some folks might think that this is a book that needs to be banned, but The Bluest Eye is not just a book about race. It is not just a book about sexual assault. The Bluest Eye is a book about overcoming trauma. It is a book about identity. It is a book about self-love, and it is written so poetically and lyrically by the one and only Toni Morrison. And it's a book that I truly believe that the majority of the people in this country who have not read it should and could read and would really, truly learn so much from.
This is Clint Smith, and one of my favorite banned books is Angie Thomas's The Hate You Give, because it fundamentally rejects the idea that young people shouldn't be having conversations about the nature of systemic racism. And I think it's a really important book to have in our schools, and I'm glad Angie wrote it.
Valentine's Day is upon us, and I've got love on the brain. Love for books, duh, of course. Hello. Did you forget what podcast you're listening to? I love bringing you all great reads, exclusive author interviews, and behind the scenes book gossip. But I can only do that with your support over on Patreon and Substack. Our Stacks Patreon community, also known as the Stacks Pack, is where you can go for book club meetups, a private, very active Discord, and a year-long mega reading challenge to help you achieve all your reading goals. Plus, you also get that monthly bonus episode. Now, over on the Substack, you can subscribe to my newsletter, Unstacked, where I keep the book conversations going. I also give you a healthy dose of sports and pop culture, definitely some hot takes happening over there. And again, that bonus episode. If you don't have a few dollars to spare, don't worry. There are free options on the Substack and the Patreon to get you a little extra Stacks magic. Making this podcast is a total team effort, and by supporting my Patreon and my Substack, you allow me to support my amazing team that makes the show possible every single week. So if you or your friends are looking to meet other book lovers and support this indie podcast, come hang out with me on Patreon, Substack, or both. I would love to have you. And since we're talking about love, you can gift subscriptions to the Patreon and the Substack for that special reader in your life. For the Stacks Pack, head to patreon.com/thestacks. And for the newsletter, head to traceythomas.substack.com. And also, there are links to both in the show notes. Okay, see you in the Stacks. Do you think that there's anything that children shouldn't know?
That's like the best question ever.
It's like the broadest question ever.
But it might be the best question. Like, no. I think that children should attempt to know everything. But I think that because I think knowledge knowability is fluid. So I think our jobs as teachers, writers, parents might be, how do we begin to encourage our kids to know blank? But I do think kids should have the opportunity to begin to know everything.
I think so.
I mean, that puts the onus on us, though, right?
Yeah. And I think that's where it should be. They're kids.
Right. I mean, I think about the failures in my life, and not to blame my father, my mom, my grandmom, and them, but like, I wish my grandmother, my mother, my aunties, my father would have ever talked to me about sex.
Same.
Like ever, like tried. Like, could y'all say it? Like, I've seen some of y'all doing it. I've heard y'all talking to each other about it. I'm real curious about it. Can you directly address me in a way? And, I don't want it to be like, don't do this, but I'll even take that. Like, just like try to talk to me about it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's what I like, I grew up I went to a high school, like, we never heard the words racism. From our teachers, from ourselves, we never heard the words like patriarchy. We never heard the word misogyny, never heard the word like poverty. Like, so I think you should attempt to talk about but that means you got to prepare yourself. You can't sit up there and talk about no fucking quantum physics to a kid if you don't know shit about no quantum physics, right? You gotta, you can be on the phone. Like, let me go see if I can talk to Chanda. So you gotta
say you gotta call Chanda.
You gotta call Chanda. You gotta be like, I'm trying to talk to my kid about this shit. How would you? That's the kind of work I think we got to do. So yeah, I think that's the answer to that question, and it's a scary answer because I feel like I feel like when you say yes to that, you're not being fair to kids. You're like burdening them with too much. But
yeah,
I don't know. Okay, maybe.
This is like a really oversimplification of sort of the answer to that question, because I agree with you. I think that the kids need to know everything.
Yeah.
But I follow this like mommy food blog thing, and it talks about like getting your kid to eat vegetables, and it talks about how to talk about that with your kids depending on their age. So like when they're young, it's like yellow vegetables or orange vegetables make your heart happy, and then it's older, it's like orange vegetables have this in them, and then it starts to become a conversation about like why it's important to have a balanced diet, and like certain vegetables do certain things. But in the beginning it's just like orange vegetables give you energy or whatever she says. And like talking, like, because kids should know about everything, but it has to be age appropriate, So like, I understand not giving an 8-year-old heavy for sure. Feels like a lot.
Right.
But like we still have to be able to have books that access these same conversations, and parenting that accesses these conversations at all ages. Like, another anecdote is that we swear in front of our kids, because I feel strongly as a person who swears a lot that you have to be able to know how to wield that kind of language.
Right.
And so like, it's not okay for my kids just to never know that the word fuck exists, but they have to learn how to use it and say it, and where to say it, and when to say it, and when not to, just like any other word. And I think a lot of parents are like, oh, you said fuck in front of my kid. I'm like, yeah, and I'm going to say it again because I say it. It's a word. It exists, and like, not to get like too on the nose about censorship, quote unquote, and whatever, but like that goes the same for the N-word. Like, you have to know how to use it. And a lot of people do know and want to pretend like they don't, Joe Rogan. But to me, it's like, if I have to know about it as an adult, or if I have to learn about it at some point in my life, I would rather have learned about it earlier than later.
Absolutely. And you're learning, like that literally is my favorite word, right?
Learning?
No, the N word, nigga. That's my that is my favorite word, right?
Wait, how come I thought you were gonna say learning?
Because like I should say learning because I'm an author, but I am a nigga who is learned, who loves to say the word nigga. I've written about it, I write through it, I write around it, blah 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 blah. But my learning about that word is not finite. I'm perpetually going to learn about that word and its meanings and manifestations until I'm up out of here. So it just puts more incentive on us to ironically be children. Like we have to educate ourselves to be able to educate our children, right? Like we have to be able, like there's this podcast called Freedom Means, which is all about how to talk to your children about shit like this. Like I learned so much from that podcast, and I just think that's me. I'm not trying to put anything on anybody else, but I want to be able to talk to children about everything with the understanding that they are never going to have a finite understanding of anything. And I think if you take that approach, I think it changes the expectation a bit.
And I mean, this is very my experience in my life. So, different kids, it might be different. But my experience as a child is that my parents always put us in front of stuff and then let the conversation happen. Like, I think I mentioned this week already, but I can't remember. But, we're Jewish, and my parents took us to the Holocaust Museum when I was like 8 or 9.
Whoa.
Which I think most people would be like, too young. Do
you remember what you felt?
Yeah, I do remember. So we didn't go to every room. Like there's some rooms in the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. that I did not ever see until I was an adult.
Right.
I've been many times because I think that was very formative for me to understand the history of the people of which I am part of.
Yep.
My family was not part of the Holocaust. They came over from Russia during the pogroms, but obviously, it's all part of it. But I do remember being like captivated by it.
Yeah.
And like wanting to understand what had happened and how this could happen. And like towards the front of the museum, there's like an area that I think is like directed towards children. It's like a little house that you can go in. And I think it's like a house in the ghetto.
Right.
And like I remember being in there and being like, this is very small.
Yeah.
And like I remember being like, people lived here. And I remember we got the little passport that they give you about like who your person is and if they lived or died.
Wow.
Right. And like I remember all of that stuff, and I remember it from older visits, but I also remember asking my mom about it after we were there, because the first time I went, my brother was probably like 13, and him and my dad did like the whole thing, and my mom and I did like a truncated version. And so while we waited for them, I remember like asking her what was going on. And so my parents didn't have to do the full explanation of Hitler and the Holocaust. Like they put us in front of it. I remember watching Roots as a young girl.
Yeah, same.
And like, so my dad didn't have to be like, this is the history of slavery. He could be like, Kunta Kinte wanted to say this because he was being defiant. Like these were like, this is what resistance looks like. And so I think that like books are the same in the way that those are tools that actually let parents off the hook in a lot of ways, because you can allow someone who's thought about it and is an expert in it to do a lot of the work for you. And then you get to have the conversations of sort of like unpacking.
Absolutely. And the conversations are the most important, the unpacking.
Yeah, that's the important stuff. Like a lot of the books and museums, whatever, that's just getting the knowledge out there to the person.
Right.
But I stand by my parents' decision to take me to the Holocaust Museum.
Absolutely.
At 8 or 9.
Yeah.
I'm sure for some people, like, that's not appropriate for your kid or whatever. I don't know. But, everyone knows this about me. I love nonfiction. I love war.
Right.
Maybe it's because I don't love war. I love reading about it.
Of course.
But, I think these things do shape us. And I think that if I had not had those experiences at a young age, I maybe wouldn't be who I am now, because I wouldn't have discovered, my Jewish guilt.
Absolutely. and what's so interesting to me about this is that, I mean, like, Heavy is about that, right? Like I'd watched Roots before with my mama, and we had an experience. And then, I went to this white school for the first time in my career, in my life, in 8th grade. And we're watching Roots. I'm like one of a few black kids in the class. And that was it. We watched Kunta Kinte get his ass beat and had to call himself Toby, and then had to go to recess.
Right.
Now, see, that's not healthy. Do you know what I mean? No. Like, there was no, let me check in. Y'all want to talk. Tell me what you're feeling, which is what I wish some parent or teacher would have said to me. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, well, at least we did our Black History shit. We showed them Roots. Like, I don't, as an educator, I just don't think that's the way to go. I think you got to show them, but I think you also got to, like, check in.
Right. Well, that's the hard part is like who is teaching the classes. I think
That's right.
for me, not that I agree with banning books at all, but a very heavy butt. That butt's carrying a lot. Okay. Let me just say, but I do feel that there are certain books I wouldn't want my children taught by certain teachers.
Absolutely.
And like, that's the hard part. You
Right.
know, it's like how teachers are doing so much work in this pandemic and they're so overworked and all of these things. So I'm not shitting on any teacher, but what I am saying is just like what Katrina said is that teachers are human too, and they come into it with their own preconceived notions, their own lessons that they've learned, their own experiences. And I don't know that I just want any old teacher teaching my kid the bluest eye.
No, I don't. I know I don't. I mean,
Right. But
I mean,
but how
teacher,
do you do that?
well, I think that once we understand that a book alone, and this goes back against like a lot of what us literary people think, because sometimes I think we live in this world where we think the book that changed our lives, right? But often it's the teacher who brought us into a text and a classroom who brought us out of a text that created an experience that often like worked against most of our experiences with books and classroom. Most of my experiences with books and classrooms were horrid. Like I've read
Me too.
books like in classrooms that I actually found out later were great, but the classroom and the teacher like didn't know what they were doing. So I agree with you. I love that you're taking it into that direction, because like if you're banning these books at a school, like I'm wondering if the teachers in those classrooms are even necessarily equipped to teach those books if they haven't organized and pushed back against the ban. I'm not putting that responsibility on teachers because they have too much responsibility already, but I do think we need to think about the ways books are taught. But we can't, the problem is sometimes you can't even get to that if they're trying to just keep the material out of the hands of the kids,
Right.
you know?
Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, it's definitely like multifaceted. I feel like we have to go
okay.
because we've been talking a lot. I don't want to, as you know. We can keep jamming offline, but
All
I do
right.
have two more questions for you.
Okay.
One is, what are some things people can do to support the stopping of these bannings? If you have any organizations or ideas or thoughts about what folks can do.
Well, I think the first thing people can do is that if there are parents who are listening to this podcast, I think you should go to your school boards, go to your schools, ask them what books, if any, have they decided, will not be taught. And actually like make the school board, make the parents, make the folks have a conversation about those books. If those books happen to be books that are all written by people who are Black, who are great at bookmaking, I think you need to really, really push and push and push and maybe push your child up out of that school, right? Like that's one thing I think we can do. The second thing I think that we can do is, and this is a larger philosophical question, but I think that like we can do the work that we're trying to do here, which is to like mystify the book and not make the book just, not talk about the book as if it is like a bastion of virtue or like a bastion of villainy, right? Like really fucking talk about the fact that books are fucked up because we're fucked up. But there's some books who actually do care a lot about the children who might be reading these books. That doesn't mean that those books are going to be less fucked up, but it means that those children might be like the intended audience. And
Right.
so like if you're going to ban a particular book that actually takes your child's life seriously, I would just encourage you not to have any more children. And that's my suggestion.
Yeah. I do want to say this before I ask you the last question, sort of about like, because I mean, we talked a lot about like books by Black authors. And I think also just like from what I've heard and learned this week from talking to people, it's also like such an aggressive attempt to ban books by queer authors.
Absolutely.
And for me, what's troubling, the troubling difference between those two groups, though there is, of course, intersectionality, like someone like George M. Johnson, who is both Black and queer, of course, is that there is a push to ban the existence of these humans. You
Right.
know, like I think like with a lot of the books by Black authors who are not queer, it's about banning like resistance or banning obscenity and classifying Black people as that. But I think when it comes to the like LGBTQIA books, it's about banning the existence of those lives,
Yeah.
which is, it's just really troubling, obviously, but also really cynical. Like because I think Black people have already been marked as obscene in this
Mm-hmm.
country, right? And as, resistant and bad and naughty. For me, the banning of books by Black authors, while also very troubling, feels right in line with everything that I've ever learned. And I feel like the banning of the books by queer authors is starting to feel like, not that I'm surprised by it, but just like really we're getting to a place that is feeling very like dictatory with that.
No question.
You know?
And what I love about what you're saying is like the fact is so many of these books that they're banning that we read as being they're banning Black authors. Like you can read The Color Purple as being like they're banning a Black book, but like that's a Black queer book. That's a queer Black book. Do you know what I mean? Like Heavy is not talked about as a queer Black book, or Long Division, but those to me are Black books that like are exploring, among other things, like queerness. Do you know?
Yeah.
And so like they are absolutely attempting to take us back to when I was in high school, where nobody could come out. Nobody could fucking like begin to talk about explorations of sexuality that were not so, quote unquote normative or hetero. You know what I mean? Like they are trying to take us back to that destructive place where lots and lots and lots of more kids were harming themselves because they could not fucking find or see themselves anywhere. Now, like that's again, but your kid, like some of the parents who don't want their children to see these are queer. You know what I'm saying? Like some of these kids are and so like imagine being like, nah, I know that this world is gonna fuck with you, but I don't want you to see explorations of yourself in a book. Like that's what they doing, fam.
It's like denial, right?
Yeah.
It's like major denial.
And erasure, like, which is a kind way to say like scrubbing the identity of like if you scrub someone's identity completely away, you kill that person. That's a kind of humiliation. My question often is just like, why do that to your child? Because I know this ain't about the book. It's about what you feel about your child. Don't erase your child. And if you're gonna erase your child, last thing I'll say, Tracy, is like, don't use Heavy. Don't use Morrison. Don't use George Johnson. Don't use Jason Reynolds. Because for better or worse, we do or are attempting to see that child and the relationship with the parent. But don't erase your child with us, not with our work. Right. That's brutal. We don't want to be complicit in that shit,
Yeah. No, I do know. Okay, my last one. What's your favorite banned book?
Ooh. I want to come with something fresh, but it's The Color Purple, which is banned like lots and lots and lots of places.
That's a book that we read in school that we read poorly in school. That I think I'm going to revisit this year because I didn't like it in school.
Yeah. I didn't like it in school either. But I loved it outside of school when I could, actually read it with some space and have a little context and understand like, what it meant to directly address God as a little Black queer girl, what it meant to like, have these like really weird polyamorous relationships and shit going on with it. All like it's a wild, mysterious, wonderful book to me that should not be banned. I think people forget that it's carried by the voice of like a young people.
Yeah. All right, Kiese.
Thank you.
This was great. Thank you always. Everyone else, thank you for coming with us on this journey through a week of banned bookedness. Hopefully we never have to do this again. I mean, right. I'm sure this is going to become an annual thing, but hopefully not. Hopefully between now and next year, when we get ready to do this again, maybe all the books will be restored and I can have a week off, Is that too much to ask?
Thank you for doing it thorough too, though. Can I just say thank you for not just being like, what do you think about your book being banned? Like, thank you for actually like doing the research, connecting voices that don't get to talk to one another. I mean, this is the kind of thing that like we need to do if we want to be educated. And a lot of us sadly don't make time to. So I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for encouraging me. I reached out to Kiese the day I had the idea and was like, is this corny? Am I a loser? And you were like, no, do it. So thank you for encouraging. And everyone else, thank you for listening. And we'll be back with regularly scheduled Wednesday episodes next Wednesday. So we'll see you in the stacks. All right, everybody, that's it. We have made it to the end of the first ever Banned Books in the Stacks week. Thank you all so much for listening and sharing this mini-series. I am honored beyond words to be a part of this community that cares so deeply and is willing to take action in defense of books. Our books are too important to be silenced. I want to thank all of our guests this week: Katrina Stokes, Thursday Williams, Allison Bechtel, Kelsey Reynolds, Senator Ghazala Hashmi, Hannah Oliver Depp, Tamaya Wright, Azar Nafisi, and Kiese Laymon. All of them took the time to talk to me on super short notice, and I'm just so grateful for their insights. I also must give a humongous thank you to my incredible editor and partner in this endeavor, Christian Duenas. He is a star, and I have to say, he was given basically every opportunity to say no, and instead he said yes to this project, and he helped craft this week into what you all heard. So thank you so much, Christian. If you like this week of programming, if you like The Stacks and want to support the work we do here, please join us on Patreon, patreon.com/The Stacks. The Stacks is a completely independent podcast, which means this show is made only thanks to listeners like you. Remember, the Stacks Book Club pick for February is I Live a Life Like Yours by Jan Grew. We will be discussing the book on the podcast on Wednesday, February 23rd with Tessa Miller. I also want to quickly just say thank you to Sam Pinkleton, Andrew Russell, Cree Miles, Joseph Papa, Taryn Roeder, Jackson Musker, and Jared Woods for helping make this week possible. Everything you heard in today's episode can be found in the link in the show notes. And for more from The Stacks, follow us on social media at The Stacks Pod on Instagram, at The Stacks Pod _ on Twitter, and check out our website, thestackspodcast.com. As I mentioned, our incredible editor is Christian Duenas, our graphic designer is Robin McCrite, and our theme music is from Tagiragis. The Stacks is created and produced by me, Tracy Thomas.